Welcome to the Cosmetic Podcast.
This podcast amplifies the topics you want to hear about.
Cosmetic means being a person or thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
Globally minded and locally focused.
I'm Rodrigo Ross.
I'm Keith Benson.
So today we are talking about the Circle of Life, Volume 2. We had the opportunity to do Volume 1, talking with the women. And so now the fellas are on deck, and we are talking about having a network or a circle of friends that lift you, that celebrate you, that push you to be better, that make you a better person. So a little bit of backstory, a little bit of history. When it comes to our health, most of us are well aware of the basics. You have to eat right, you have to exercise, get plenty of sleep, drink water, all that wonderful stuff. But research is showing that in your overall wellness journey, the importance of relationship plays a major factor. And so, Keith, I am going to let you introduce this amazing crew that you have assembled today to talk to us about the idea of the circle of life and that brotherhood.
And I'm glad to have on some friends, some mentors from my time in the YMCA. First, I want to introduce Mr. David Brown. He's the CEO of the YMCA of the Capital District.
David Brown. Say it.
The David Brown.
Thank you.
The man who brought together 9,000 people on this call for the largest event ever in the YMCA. And of course, he did it with a team of people. And part of that team, Mr. Michael DeVaul, the strategist, the man who is leading our charge for the Boards of Color throughout the YMCA movement. And then there's Mr. Michael Farris, the National Director of Diversity and Inclusion. These guys right here have been a support to me in so many different ways. I remember even during the pandemic, Michael Farris and I just had this conversation about, hey, what's going on, man? I just wanted to reach out to you to find out how you feeling, how's your Y doing? And David Brown just texting back and forth. Yeah, David sent me this inspiring speech that he had the opportunity to present to a group of people for 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Yes, I saw that. Go on YouTube and look that up. David Brown, Capital District Y. It will change your life. Yes.
Something with that, man, because that thing was moving. And then just a few weeks ago, me and Michael DeVaul was having a conversation just about the why and just all the stuff that is going on in our society today. And so, fellas, I'm so glad that you guys are with us today to we can all talk about this whole thing of brotherhood and all the things that are going on in our society today.
Mm-hmm. I'm super excited that I get to be on the fly on the wall during this whole thing, y'all. I'm feeling real fancy today, not gonna lie. So let me jump right in, right? And I'm really curious. I want to hear from you guys. How are you all experiencing the world right now, right? Like, you guys all inhabit influential spaces. There are thousands of people that kind of just wait to hear what you have to say and what you think. How are you experiencing the world right here, right now, 2020?
So I guess I'll go first again, thinking about the age. The youngest goes first. And
well, I'm younger than you, but you might want to look at the top.
I'm talking about the guys, Rodrigo.
We're going to check IDs in a little while.
Right. I'm just, thankful to be a part of this mixtape volume 2 as we dive deeper into this conversation. I think for me, just experiencing the world and the space that we're in right now, I think that this is probably the best time, especially around this work in social justice and anti-racism, to be a part of our organization that really aligns with my deep passion for the work of the Y, and then bringing together some of the external pieces of us unpacking, systemic issues. And, I wouldn't be able to do any of that if I didn't have the support of the people on this call, not just these 3 gentlemen that are here that have helped hold me accountable for how I've shown up, but also being true to my authentic self and not trading that in for anything. And they've helped hold me accountable to that, and also elevating, my voice in spaces. So I've appreciated the 3 of them, as well as you, Rodrigo. You have done that as well. So I know it's all a collective effort.
See, I'm part of the boys' conversation.
You are part of the boys. Yeah. Well, I want to give you a shout out too, Rodrigo, because as we began to develop the Boys of Color work. As you know, right, from the African American CEO work, you were on the original group that helped shape the strategy,
Yeah.
because we're going to need everybody. We
Yes,
don't need
indeed.
somebody.
Yes,
We need
indeed.
everybody.
I am a mother of 2 boys of color. So
There you go.
yes, indeed.
We,
Yes, indeed.
from the sisters out there, we're going to need everybody in the village, right? And the
Right.
women are the backbone of our existence anyway, right? So it's
Yep.
the way it works. I would say I like Michael's, and I think the top of the hour, you actually spoke about well-being. I think the well-being is really important, but self-love is the best love, right? Hard to love somebody else until you love yourself first.
Right.
So I would say broadly, we as Black men need to love self. Then we need to be collective, right? As I think I say, the new world order is to divide the work so that we can conquer the system.
Yeah.
And clarity is really important. So I just say this last point before we pass it on to the wisdom wise Dave Brown. But we have to realize too, there's some colonization in our system. There's some blood water, and yet at the same time, we can stay our own boat. So to me,
Yeah.
as I tell people, there's no better time to be Black than right now.
Right now. Yeah.
Black and
Yeah.
brown, better just claim Black and brown, right? Because we never give up our power.
Yeah.
You can give up the control of the prediction, because actually God is in control of that. But the den of thieves will come for our temple, and if we don't stay collective, right, this is a turning over the table moment. So let's turn it over, right? But God asked 2 questions in that, right? If you remember in Matthew, He asked you if you are unprepared or unshaken. Be unshaken, because we have been preparing for this one moment.
Yeah. We finna have church up in here, Dave.
Right,
You
right.
gonna offer the benediction or what? Senior pastor Lee
See,
David Brown, come on and
Well, I would just echo what the 2 Michaels said, and what I would say is what I'm seeing more now is people are looking more for the why to provide leadership.
yeah.
And even though the why was providing that leadership before, I'm not sure that folks heard it or wanted to hear it. And now I think people are looking for the why to provide that leadership, which is why we had such a great turnout on the town hall meeting for undoing systemic racism. And I found here locally in Albany, I'm getting phone calls from newspapers to do interviews to discuss the matter. I've been asked to be on a number of virtual conferences, panel discussions to discuss systemic racism. And I think, what's happened is this 8 minutes and 46 seconds of one man putting his knee on someone's neck really negated all the criticism of another man taking a knee to say we can't be doing this.
Right.
And the stance that Colin Kaepernick took by taking a knee, a lot of people have tried to say, well, he was opposed to the flag. Well, no, what he was saying is he's opposed to Black men being murdered by police officers.
Absolutely.
So now we're asking America, which knee are you more upset about? And in turn, I think more people are coming to people like myself, Michael DeVaul, Michael Farris, and asking us for our perspective on it. Because that one knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds opened up the eyes of millions of people to say, boy, people of color have been going through this all along. We just never saw it because it wasn't being videotaped.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think what's happening is there's more honest dialogue now.
Absolutely. So recognizing that none of you guys just kind of woke up and was the age that you are today. Not that I'm saying anybody is old. Well, Keith is kind of old, but it's fine. He's still, he still got some good years left in him. Talk about the importance of boys of color, right? And then making that transition and being able to see you guys in spirit and in truth doing the work, but still having the, like Mike DeVaul said, have to navigate this system, right? That is just not structured to make them successful. And of course, I'm going to toss it too. So before I do that, let me just call out the elephant in the room, the 2 illustrious members of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, who are amongst us today, Mr. Michael DeVaul, Mr. Michael Brown. I would be remiss, and plus they gave me a little sponsorship money. I'm not gonna lie. So go ahead and put that in there. But Mike, talk to us, Michael DeVaul, talk to us about the Boys of Color initiative and the why, and then the broader implications that it's having on you guys as men of color.
Well, I'll start out because I do want to honor, I think, Rodriguez, again, you were on that original team. It came out of the African American CEOs under Dave's leadership. We spent, I don't know, Dave, almost a day focusing on it. And if you go back in our history, right, it's kind of a weird thing anyway, right? Because people ask me always, like, well, when did you start working on Boys of Color? When did the Y start focusing on it? You know what I tell them? 1853.
Right.
When Anthony created the first Y, we weren't even dealing with anybody other than boys. And if you go back in the history, we were known as an organization who focused on, taking boys to men, right? So there's a book called actually Manhood Factories, because that's what we were known as in the late 50s, 60s, and 70s. So to come back to it for a second, because I don't want to lose this, the fact that we have 4 men on this call, right, is unusual in the sense, if you look broadly at the Y, right?
Yeah.
In our systems, we don't have a lot of men of color working for the system. So I think
Right.
we got to be clear. One of the reasons that we have to go to Boys of Color is so that we can seed more men working for the organization. And so I think, that is what I would say broadly is so really important. The other is, if you look at any data and you understand this targeted universalism strategy, no city will heal itself until boys of color actually get better.
Right.
Because the data tells you we're actually holding back systems because the systems were set up against us. So if you are white and you say, what can I do? You can acknowledge boys of color, because the reason schools are not doing as well, the reason that you may be creating more takers of taxes rather than makers of taxes, is because the system was designed to hold us down. And so white girls can't do better unless better. And so it's not really just, I think, boys of color getting better. The community gets better when we get better.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Brown, Michael said this was kind of your onus. You galvanized the folks. I remember being a part of that. I was super excited that we were even being courageous enough to enter that space as an organization. What made you decide, okay, this is the time, this is the focus, let's do it?
Well, there was a number of issues going on in the YMCA around folks not being promoted for jobs and feeling that they were being passed over. And I had come up through the Y, really being mentored by, Ron Sargent, who was the CEO of the Plainfield Y in New Jersey, where I grew up, Harold Mazzell, Kevin Washington. And one of the things that I remember early on in my career was the Black Service Conference. And because of the Black Service Conference, I got connected to so many, African-American professionals and people of color in the movement. And we had moved away from that in the Y. And so I just felt like it was time for us to reconvene the group. There was a small group of African-American CEOs meeting. And the more we met and the more we talked, the more I felt like we need to include everybody. And so there's 38 African-American CEOs. And I think 3 years ago, we had our first conference. But when we got together and we talked, we recognized how much power and how many resources we had in the room. And we said, we can't just get together to socialize. Something has to come out of this. And through those conversations, we came up with the Boys of Color initiative.
Excellent. So, Mike,
can I add one thing I think is really important for your listening viewers to understand? It is actually rooted in data. So when you go back to Raj Chetty's data, where basically he's saying there's a fading American dream. It is by definition of the national data. We would consider it a national pandemic. And so we also have to go back to the data. And let me just read this one little quote, because I think it's really important. It's actually by a sister from that works for the Brookings Institute. So I think it sets the table for something Dave was saying a little bit earlier on the knee. She says, her name is Camille Busette, and you can look on this. It's actually online. To be male, poor, and either African American or Native American is to confront on a daily basis a deeply held racism that exists in every social institution. So that's from the data. That's the national.
Right.
Is that I would expand because sometimes Native American and/or Black are also Latinx. So I think
Yeah.
if you add that flavor in there, but basically that's what I'm saying is I think people got to understand the blood is in the water, and we got to really acknowledge the truth. And
Yeah.
Claude, Dave, and Angie Reese Hawkins, and a few others who, we had some national leaders in that room talking data, Dave, and I mean, you can't deny it. The truth is in the information.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if I could just add, what really drove our conversation was at the time of our conference, an article had just come out in the New York Times, and it said punishing data of boys of color shows that they have no future. And when you read this article and you looked at the statistics that was saying that even a successful African American professional now, their children will do far worse than they did.
Wow.
And it really moved all of us to say we have to do something. So Mike is spot on about the data, but it was this one article
Mm.
that said punishing data of boys of color or African American children shows bleak future, that really inspired the group to step forward and say we got to fix this.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
Wow.
know we're
You
looking
know,
at Texas. There's data in Texas that shows that within 10 zip codes is the most populated part of our jail system in Texas. You know, Texas is
mm,
one of the largest states in the country, but all of those come from this central area here in the Dallas area that Rodrigo and myself get to work in. And
mhm.
what's amazing is that when people talk about where everybody has the same opportunity. Well, it can't be the case because our jails are more populated at a higher percentage than what, our population, just in America is. And so somewhere the system is failing our boys of color. And we got to be able to be in that space and be more bold about it.
Mhm. You want to add anything, Mr. Michael Farris?
Yeah, the only thing that I would continue to elevate that I think both Mike and Dave touched on, as well as Keith, is this: where we are is a pivotal moment where we have all of these pandemics
Mhm.
crashing into one another, right? So
Yes.
Yeah.
we have the of COVID-19 that is brought some additional things into our communities that we're seeing it disproportionately impacting us, and the overlay of the two most relevant and long-standing pandemics of poverty or classism and racism within our country. And so when we think about how all three of those things came together to bring about this conversation of not just us undoing within the why, but how do we unlearn anything that we have been taught to elevate some of those conversations to get to the point of we all can't pull ourselves up, to quote Mayor Stephen Reed, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps if you don't have boots.
Right.
So
Yeah.
how are you going to do that
Yeah.
to be on a level playing field with everyone else? That's something that I think we as an organization are recognizing. It's something that we have had conversations about within our small circles. However, I think more folks are listening to those people, and it's an awakening that is happening not only within the Y but within our greater society as a whole.
Yeah, yeah. So, I can imagine that the blessing and the burden of being a black man of color inhabiting these spaces of influence, understanding the dynamic that focusing on boys of color and the ramifications it could have for society as a whole. But what gives you guys hope? What makes y'all hopeful? What makes you just get up and do it next day? I'm tired today, but I'm gonna get up tomorrow and I'm gonna keep going. What gives you hope?
I say for me, man, is brothers like DeVaul, David, Farris, is that people that I know I can call on,
Mm-hmm.
people that's going to give me that insight, and so they're not going to withhold information that's going to help me to take a step forward.
Yeah.
Just brothers that will help you maneuver the system, and also to, hey man, I need you to put this in the room for me, and the willingness to do that right there. I would tell you from a CEO perspective, Dave Brown has been like the number one person for me to be able to call in that CEO space that I can text Dave and I know within 5 minutes I'm getting a text back.
Yep. Yep.
And for me, that's appreciative because
I get it, because I'll ask Dave something and he gonna tell me the truth. I'll get on an idea and he'll be like, no. Well, okay then, Mr. Brown. I'll be back with another idea.
So he does that to y'all too. So
he's consistent.
He's good that way. I'll be ready for him with a good idea, and he's so eloquent with it. No. Okay then.
I gotta remind people too. I just just because I'm gonna expand Dave a little bit. Dave is married to a Latinx woman, man. I say, like, look, that brother ain't walking in that house without truth telling.
Right.
That's right.
Well, hold up, brother. You not in that same space too, though.
I'm in the same space, but I'm I got a truth telling wife. That's right. But that's what we need, right? Is our partners is what holds us up high and keeps us truthful and honest.
Yeah, it's in our wife handbook. That's like number 2, the lesson number 2. Tell the truth. It's in our handbook, y'all. It's true. It's true. What gives you hope, Michael?
Yeah, let me tell you what gives me hope. Oh, no, Michael. No, Michael.
I would say, I think for me, it's our youth and their connection to not only social justice, but doing what's right. I think, although I don't have boys in my home, I have 2 daughters. One, I call her my oldest, a young Angela Davis. Like, she is all about social justice and moving and unpacking those histories. But it gives me hope that we are not, by the time she is in her 50s or 60s, by 2080, that she's not talking about, well, we had these marches and protests and demonstrations in 2020 and we're still doing them at this time. That there has been some change because our young people are more aware. She's gotten more exposure to things and is more aware of things that I wasn't aware of until maybe I went to college. And she's having deeper conversations around systems level thinking that she's unpacking at 8 years old, which gives me hope for the systemic changes that we want to make. So our young people, and then just the level of conversation that we're having within the organization as a whole, I think is on a whole nother level than what it was previously. And it's due to a lot of the consistent push from individuals on this call and then other individuals in the movement that, it gives me hope that I can't get tired. We had Congressman John Lewis, who recently passed away and who had been doing this work for so long. So for me, I can't look at this and be like, oh man, I'm so exhausted, I'm tired, which rightfully so. But there's so many people that have come before me that I can't be tired because I'm standing on the shoulders of those giants to press forward.
Yeah. You wanted to add, and that was my fault. We got 2 Michaels. I probably should have been specific when I said Michael. Well,
I'll quickly let the wise Dave Brown sort of wrap us up. But what I would say is that let me tell you what gives me hope every single day I walk in. One is I'm 58, so I've seen it before. Just to make sure, Michael, right, is, Gordon Mack. I think about people when I came into the movement. Gordon Mack. I even would say Solon Cousins, I think, was probably the closest to, as a white man who understood the Black plight. I also grew up in an African-American Y, Emerson Street Branch and Evanston. So it's not like I haven't seen it or experienced it before. The last thing I would say, I think that is just magical that I keep telling Dave Brown not to, just sort of skip over or minimize. When we meet as an African-American group once a year, we decided very quickly to shift to a town hall. And at one point in time, we were talking about hundreds of people. But what I saw is, at that moment, what makes me hopeful is everybody stayed personal, right? Personal action leads to collective action. We all got behind Dave, right? And in a 7-week period, man, you get 9,000 people on the call. So to me, I say to people, right? And the fact that Kevin could talk about the Boys of Color work, right? We have been preparing for a year for a moment that happens that we're connecting with the My Brother's Keeper Alliance. So it's not like it's the preparation that was happening and the fact that we are undoing what the systems have taught us, which is to divide ourselves. And that Dave could inspire us to have, and everybody just rose behind Dave. That to me is what provides so much inspiration and so much hope to go
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, come on, Mr. Brown. We waiting to hear. Make sure.
Grand Poopah.
Yeah, I appreciate all this praise. I really do. But all of that both Michaels are talking about, it was a team effort. We have a lot of talent in the African American CEO Network, African American Resource Network, and all of those people help make it possible. So, I'm just appreciative that they look to me to be the leadership or one of the leaders in the group. I'll tell you what makes me hopeful is that I look at the YMCA as my ministry. I'm reading a book right now about, what is your purpose? And I really believe that my purpose has been to deliver good work through the YMCA. And I've used the Y, as my ministry. And I'm just hopeful that I can reach one more person, one more child, one more family. And, my heart is for children of color. I love everyone, but specifically where I really am trying to make a difference is in the Black community with Black kids.
Yeah.
And when I look at what others have gone through, and both of these colleagues of mine and friends of mine have talked about the standing on the shoulders of others and the debt that we have to pay, going forward. When I look at John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, who just passed away, and I look at how they got their heads beaten in, no one's ever put a hand on me to speak my mind or to say, hey, that's wrong, don't do that. And these men endured hardships that I can't even imagine. And so, I'll just echo what's already been said, because when I see that, I know I can't quit, and I know there's days, trust me, believe me, there's days where I'm saying, why am I doing this? But there's good outcomes. When you know that you've helped somebody else or you help make the world a better place, it does a lot for you. And I really believe I really believe that this is what God put us here to serve, to help others and to build His kingdom. And I really believe that that's what our mission and our purpose and our mission in life is. We just have to find, what our lane is. And for me, it just happened to be the YMCA.
Lovely. Well, Keith and I very rarely agree on anything, but I think I'm with you, brother. You assembled a magnificent group today. So, what would be your closing words to the group? How you gonna wrap us up?
Yeah, I would say for us all, for all those who are listening on this call, hopefully people hear the heart of Black men, and
Yeah.
for us to be even that much more bolder when we go into different spaces to allow our voices to be heard. So because there's wisdom that is coming from out of all of this that is going on, that's going to take us another 20 to 30 years. But we have to sustain all of this right here, because really, all of this is not new. Yeah, we got people protesting today. This generation today have seen it this way, but there was, as Farris mentioned earlier, there were people that already walked, before us, and now we're standing, with those are shoulders that we get to stand on. And so, how, as Black men all across the YMCA movement, all across our United States, all across the world, how are we going to move forward to be able to sustain this, to be able to change our systems, truly change our systems that we have in our workplaces and in our communities and cities? One powerful way that we get the chance to do that is by voting. Hopefully people are taking that opportunity to go into that booth, that one small booth, press those right buttons to be able to help change our society.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you guys. I am so excited that you all took out of your time and your busy schedule. I'm super excited y'all let the one girl with sequence sitting on a meeting, and I wore pink glasses in all of you all's honor today. Mr. Michael DeVaul, Mr. Michael Farris, and the Dave Brown. Thank you guys for joining us on today. And thank you all for listening to the Cosmetic Podcast,
where our conversations are local,
globally minded, and locally focused.
Check us out. Leave us some comments on our website, ymcadallas.org/cosmetic. We'd like to hear about what is your circle of influence like.
And as always,
stay dynamic,
stay energized,
and stay cosmetic.